Far east from the shores of Seagull Harbor, resting in the murky, gloomy ocean side, is a lighthouse, aged 3 centuries, rumored to be plagued by spirits. A young woman sits in a fisherman's boat, being escorted by an old sailor, presumably the lighthouse keeper. The man has a balding head, a scraggly gray beard, and his clothes are covered in filth. He appears to be in his mid-60s. The woman is in her early 30s, with blue eyes and beach blonde curly hair and a freckled face. Her name is Edna Dillmore, and she was hired as an assistant to the old sailor who soon would be retiring from the position. During their 3-hour voyage, they hardly spoke, until they reached the lighthouse. The old man, called Gibbs, says in a gruff tone,
"Ye best be careful, lass. Watch where ye tread."
He told her in a firm tone.
Many like ye had come here to this god-forsaken rat hole, and a few had disappeared within a couple months. Some had ran, scared out of their wits, claiming that something evil lurks within its walls. Do ye believe in spooks, miss?
Edna shook her head slowly, giving a rather calm expression, although her eyes seemed to also show annoyance to the thought of ghosts.
"Mr. Gibbs,"
She replies politely.
"why do folks in Seagull Harbor talk of the lighthouse being haunted?"
The old sailor, not looking at the woman, lights his wooden pipe and sighs upon puffing a ring of smoke from it.
300 years ago, a sea captain by the name of Ramos Vandrake resided in the lighthouse with his wife Wilma and 10 children, 5 sons and 5 daughters. Ramos was a hard-working man, devoted to his work, but also a violent drunkard, and his wife Wilma did all he asked, because she feared him. The sea captain was obsessed with things that only he believed were real, as if the lighthouse were alive, as if it had a soul. He'd see shadows and hear voices each day and night, while his family stayed in the cottage. The more he kept to himself in the lighthouse, the lesser of himself he became. Something had possessed him. The wife at first thought her husband was overworked and simply exhausted from the labor he had done during the long shifts, but he had become aggressive with his own offspring. It all started with the eldest son, of course, Jim. Jim was an unruly boy, a 16-year-old that lived for mischief, and particularly had a fondness for sneaking into the lighthouse and stealing treasures to sell for his own personal gain. The captain eventually discovered the culprit of the thefts to be his own son, and what had occurred after remains a mystery. The more the captain was driven to madness, the more territorial he was, to the point where he just shut himself off from the world, and anyone who dare come ashore, they were never heard from again.
Edna arched an eyebrow skeptically.
"All due respect, Mr. Gibbs, for your years of servitude.
She chirps.
And I mean no offense, but don't you think the imagination of fools is possibly the cause of this mass hysteria of why these people fled? You're not actually serious about this whole haunted lighthouse craziness, are you?"
The old sailor frowns, displeased, removing his hands from the oars in his boat, and grumbling some curse words under his breath.
I say, I am not a stranger to such ghastly spectres that still claim homage here, miss.
He scolds.
I've seen several of 'em, even the ghost of the sea captain himself. I've settled in the same cottage for 10 years, and I'd hear that sea dog wailing out of agony in search of redemption. If ye wish to stay alive, ye be wise to pay close attention to the signs, and don't stray from your duties. It may protect ye from his wrath. If things ain't done accordingly to his standards, he just might target ye.
The old sailor pauses briefly, glancing up at the lighthouse for a moment, and handing the woman a lantern, then leaning in close to her and whispering eerily,
Follow their direction. They will keep ye safe, miss.
With that, the young woman exits the boat, carrying her luggage, and watching as the old sailor left, disappearing into the thick black fog. The woman rolls her eyes with a smile and cockily treads up the cobblestone path to the lighthouse. unaware of the true danger that awaited her. Edna had just finished unpacking upon entering her room. The lighthouse is roughly 6 stories high, with 3 bedrooms and 2.5 baths. The living room is adjacent to the captain's quarters, and the kitchen is on the first floor. The second floor has the 3 bedrooms. One bedroom is fairly large, being the girls' bedroom, where 5 of the daughters slept. The second bedroom is on the opposite side, the far left, which is the boys' bedroom, spacious enough to have an attic above and the basement below. The third bedroom on the very end of the hall is the master bedroom where the captain and his wife slept. The third floor is the storage unit, where supplies such as food and other materials are kept. The fourth floor contains an old nursery. The fifth floor has a greenhouse. The sixth and final floor is the lighthouse area and workstation. On the outside is the cottage, aka guest house, where the captain's wife and children often retreated to avoid the captain when possible. Near the cottage is the loading dock, where a single boat, well intact, sits unused, and another storage facility underground to hold sandbags, amongst other things. Edna Dillmore had taken the servants' quarters on the first floor, which had been located in the kitchen. The servants' quarters included the butlers. According to the research Edna had done on the lighthouse prior to her arrival, is that the lighthouse was converted into a chateau-like house in 1693, which was then when the captain and his family moved in officially, based on the blueprints constructed by the captain himself. It was advised strongly by Gibbs many times for those who were formerly employed to stay in the cottage, as he believed it was a safe place. But Edna didn't take heed to the advice. Purely skeptic, she most certainly couldn't resist the quality of craftsmanship of such a massive structure, in spite of the warning that the old sailor had made clear before departing. It is now 7 in the evening, and after spending 3 hours during maintenance work in the lighthouse, Edna brews herself some English tea and prepares a bowl of stew. She nestles at the kitchen table, eating peacefully, until about a few minutes later, she hears multiple footsteps. They scatter on the wood floor, scampering along. Furthermore, there's this faint but distinct sobbing of a woman echoing, followed by the howling wind outside. Edna pauses, listening closely, her facial expression mixed with confusion and bewilderment. She simply shrugs, putting it off as the trick of the fatigue that had overwhelmed her. Edna had bathed, brushed her teeth, and had gone into her nightgown, soon fallen asleep. Sometime around midnight, wailing sounds in the stormy night as heavy rain hits the window of Edna's room. She tosses and turns, trying to cover her ears, but the wailing had gotten louder and much closer to the lighthouse. Edna jerks her body out of bed and leaps over to the window, looking out. She sees nothing but the thick, black fog. The wailing soon stopped at 12:30 in the morning. Edna rubs her eyes gently and grumbles, still unconvinced. Just her imagination. That's all it is, isn't it? Edna goes back to bed, and for the remainder of the night, the lighthouse is as quiet as the grave. The phone had rang the next morning at around 8 a.m. Edna picked it up slowly, groggily getting up out of bed and placing it to her ear.
Hello?
An older woman's voice, Edna's mother, angrily snarled. Have you lost your mind, child? She shouted. Edna huffs, rubbing her temples.
What is it, Mother?
She replies calmly.
Why are you so upset?
Why have you gone there? Don't you know about the terrible happenings that occurred in that hellish place? Your great-great-great-grandfather was a servant for the Vandrake family, and he was lucky to have escaped with his life. Please come back home. It's not safe for you there.
Mother, don't be ridiculous. I don't have time to deal with your childish fantasies too. Ghosts aren't real. Seriously, I swear the entire town is brainwashed. You've been talking to Gibbs again, haven't you?
He's a close friend, and I told him to keep a watchful eye on you. Horrible things transpired in that place. The town knows the curse that has sent ships, even fishing boats, to their watery graves, and the ghost of Romus Vandrake, his name has been a painful reminder of our family's misfortunes. Don't be foolish, Edna. Your presence there will open a door that cannot be closed, and once the evil slithers its way in, your life will be at stake. I'm only trying to protect you. You're my only child, after all.
Mother, I'm sorry, but I need the money, and whatever stupid, hocus-pocus, insane mumbo-jumbo tall tales that the old sailor has fed what is left of your mind isn't going to scare me away. I got to go. Goodbye.
Edna, wait. Edna hangs up the phone quickly and sighs.
Ghosts. Curses.
She mutters in irritation.
Absolute hogwash.
The woman heads outside to the underground storage unit to gather sandbags before exploring the grounds of the island. She starts snapping some photos with her camera. They're mostly ocean view pictures with sharks, dolphins, and other fish. Edna then scans through the photos on her camera one by one, but pauses when she notices something strange. It is a faint image of an outline of a male figure. It's tall and muscular, but there's no distinct features, no face. Edna blinks.
This must be a trick of the light or something,
She had thought to herself. Edna isn't at all convinced it is a ghost. It couldn't be. It isn't possible, is it? She goes back inside the lighthouse and sits at the kitchen table, brewing herself another cup of tea and opening a brown leather book with the name History of Seagull Harbor, Michigan, Myths and Legends, in gold lettering. Flipping through the pages, Edna reads the first chapter titled Seagull Harbor Origins. The chapter specifies the founding of the town by a group of settlers who were in the Dillmore family, starting with a man named Peter Jackson Dillmore, furthermore being Edna's great-great-great-great-grandfather, father of her great-granddad Joseph Ulysses Dillmore, therefore whose child is his son, Edna's grandpa Josiah Franklin Dillmore. Peter Jackson Dillmore was once a great man of incredible wealth, coming from a prestigious family of merchants. His father, George Saimus Dillmore, a Scottish general, came to Seagull Harbor, Michigan to escape British enforcers in 1566. George Saimus Dillmore was born in the spring of 1635. He sought the construction of the town with the help of other family members, and Seagull Harbor was officially established in just a short number of months, leading up to a year of completion. George Saimus McCallum Dillmore was shot and killed during a heated argument with the head of the Vandrake family at the time, whose name was Edward Smith Vandrake. That occurred in 1667. He died just before the eve of his son Peter's birth. Seagull Harbor became an independent, sovereign town. The Vandrakes and the Dillmores fought over territory. The Vandrakes believed the Dillmores were treacherous and vandals, while the Dillmores saw the Vandrakes as con artists, thieves, and bigoted tyrants, simply because the Dillmores were filled with Scottish blood and the Vandrakes were from Britain. George Seamus McCallum had a British wife who mothered her only son Peter Jackson McCallum Dillmore, who was born in the summer of 1668. Peter McCallum Dillmore had followed in his father's footsteps, running the Weston Barrow Trading Company that was built by his father's father, Sean Milton Weston Barrow McCallum, in the late 1500s, specifically 1596. The company soon fell on hard times because of the loss of cargo, which led to a plummet in profit, and the family went bankrupt. How so much cargo had been lost remains unsolved to this day. It is believed the Vandrakes had something to do with it, but it was never proven. The Vandrakes were the only source of employment in Seagull Harbor, as Edward Smith Vandrake had bought out all the other businesses, even the small ones, because he was that powerful. It was then that Edward Smith Vandrake had supposedly died some years later, in 1772, under strange circumstances. Furthermore, as he vanished without a trace, thought of to have been under some sort of curse. He left his 6 children, but mostly his oldest son James Oliver Vandrake, the father of Romulus Angles Vandrake, with the fortune and the mansion that sits originally where the lighthouse now stands in its place. James Oliver Vandrake raised his son Romulus alone after losing his wife to scurvy in 1633. 3 days after Romulus was born, the father and son traveled all over the globe. Sir James Oliver Vandrake had his son extensively trained in the best military academy in Michigan, and thus, as time went on, upon Romulus growing in his mid-30s, age 35, he had lost his father during a winter storm while on voyage to Italy together. It was then that Romulus had met his wife Wilma Elizabeth Bathory, and they later married in 1668, having a son starting with the eldest, Tim Joshua Bathory Vandrake, who was born in 1677. The 3 triplets, Daniel, Lucas, and John, were born in 1678. The 4th son, Xavier, was born in 1680. The eldest daughter, Petunia, was born in 1683, followed by her 2 twin sisters, Janet and Lila, who were born in 1685. Then the 4th child, Mariana, was born in 1687, and the youngest, baby girl Susan, was born later in 1693, 6 months before the tragedy that struck the town of Seagull Harbor, the deaths of all 10 children and the wife of Captain Romulus Vandrake, who had vanished just like his grandfather Edward Smith Vandrake years before. Edna stopped reading. What happened to that family? And why? Something, or rather some things, didn't add up. It made no sense. How do 10 children and their mother and their own father meet their end without cause or reason? No explanation. It can't be a curse. Can it?